Right, are we good? Are we live? I think we are. Hello all and welcome back to the Women's Football Chat Live. We're here for the WSL Weekend Roundup. 15 game weeks of WSL action under our belts. We're starting to get a great picture of how the table is shaping up, how the season is going to pan out in the end. But this was a really important game week, Harry, at really all ends of the table, with a lot of results swinging what could be very important results towards the end of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. As you say, a bit of change at the top or the bottom of the table, and the big losers were really the bunch in the middle for me. But yeah, another big weekend. It feels like as we're getting closer and closer to the end of the season, these game weeks are becoming more and more tense and more important for how the table is going to shape up after match week 22. But yeah, some brilliant games, some absolute classics, some not so classics, but overall some season-defining action.
Yeah, if we had a little statistician in the corner or something, they could probably tell us that it's the first time in WSL history or something along those lines that the teams 5 to 8 have all lost.
Yeah.
Either way, fantastic. I don't know if that is a statistic. It may have happened before, but it shows how difficult it is to predict this season, all of that mid-pack losing out. Shall we get to our first game of the show, though? And where else would we start this weekend's reaction than with Arsenal 1-0 Manchester City? This was a little bit of a surprise of a result. I think before stream we were speaking about how we thought City would have it quite comfortably. But Arsenal nailed the setup in this game, and it's interesting to see. It's interesting to see what they were able to do.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant from Arsenal, and fair play to Slagers because she got it spot on. And the first side this season that we've seen really caused Manchester City problems. Of course, Chelsea beat them in the opening match week, but winning 13 on the spin since then, and that defeat to Chelsea was one opening day of the season. Jeglert's first competitive game in charge. So to see an Arsenal side take the game and beat a City side that are in full flow, that are really up to speed under Jeglerts, was fair. You've got to take your hat off to Slagers and the Gunners because they got it right and they really punished Manchester City. A bit of surprise, I think, that for City, after last week, I thought that everyone thinking they'd go into this, win this game, and they'd practically be champions. But Arsenal had different ideas, and a very big win for the home side.
I've seen a lot of the discourse around this. A lot of people talking about how have City been found out? Have we discovered City's weakness? I don't think we learnt much here. What we learnt is that, or what we saw was an Arsenal team finally capitalised and expose a Manchester City weakness that's been there since the start of the season. And what was quite bizarre is we saw Chelsea expose it on the first day of the season. We saw London City, I think, expose it to an extent a few weeks ago, and if Isabel Goodwin had some of her chances on that day, then maybe we'd be talking about this title race in a completely different context. But I think City have always had this underlying problem defending transitions. Arsenal set up in a way that made it very difficult for City to play out, made it very difficult for City to play into the final third and dominate the ball. And Arsenal had more possession in this game and was very direct and very transitional. And they targeted balls in behind. They targeted Smith on the shoulder of Knack, which was a really good decision to put that profile of Olivia Smith up against Rebecca Knack in that sort of direct battle, and Arsenal got huge dividends from that, and I think that's what we should have expected to see. I didn't think Arsenal would line up that way. I didn't think that they would expose City's weakness. I did think City's response in the second half would be a lot stronger. I thought that they didn't really do anything to change the game in the second half. Now, we'll argue obviously later about the penalty, but I don't think City did enough in the second half to try and turn it around.
Yeah, exactly that. I think that it was one of those where we said at half time of the game that yes, City were trailing, but champions react, league leaders react, and they find a way to turn things around. And when they face adversity, they spin it on its head and they find a way to win the game. And City just did not do that. And I'm not saying that they're not champion winning, they're not league winning material because of that 45 minutes, but that's not what you expect from a side that are winning trophies and have dominated the league so far this season. I expected to see something better. I thought they'd be better on the ball in the second half. I thought they'd play quicker. I thought they'd cause Arsenal a lot more problems than they did. Van Domselaar should have been tested to no end in that second half, and City should have been piling on the pressure, and instead they would, until that last kind of 5-10 minutes where there was a little bit of pressure, there was, Arsenal had it pretty comfortably, and just did well to see the job through. But yeah, City did not not, yes, the first half was poor, but yeah, as you say, I think the biggest problem for me was the way they reacted to going a goal down. They should have responded in that second half, and they didn't. And for the most part, I think that we didn't really see anything in that second 45.
Yeah, I think it's difficult to talk about this game because I think there is two narratives that are true but feel contrasting. Because City were really poor and that's why they lost this game. But a large reason they were really poor is because Arsenal were really good. I thought they absolutely nailed the setup in this game, as we said. I thought that they were aggressive off the ball and they pressed City very aggressively. I think what we saw was an urgency, and we saw, as I say, being very aggressive, but players jumping onto challenges, jumping onto players' backs. Not literally, of course, but we saw Ruben Moy every time the ball was fizzed into Shaw. Now, Shaw is usually a player who is able to ride the contact really well and read the game really well. So if she sees a player coming in, she's going to try and turn, or she's going to try and take it some way, make it very difficult for the player to actually intervene. But Ruben Moy was super aggressive. She was actually really strong in there. I think that's been a weakness of Lotte Ruben Moy in the past, is that she does get muscled off too easily. But in this game, it was quite clear she stepped up that physicality a lot. And yeah, Shaw couldn't turn, Shaw couldn't link up with players. I don't think it helped that Viviana Miedema kind of went missing in this game. So there's no one to play off, and it felt like that interplay in attacking areas just didn't come together. Carolyn, probably her worst game in a City shirt, just didn't have the impact you would have wanted. I think with the way Arsenal set up, there wasn't really the space for Carolyn to get in behind, and City didn't have the time to play those balls in behind because the midfield was so congested and Arsenal played with such an intensity. And Carolyn is brilliant at sort of receiving in behind and making very direct runs, but that's very difficult when you're playing against a congested team. And Arsenal were very narrow, and they made it very difficult for City to play through in central areas. And City are a side who are very good at creating centrally. It forced them wider, and even then I think that City struggled to get crosses into the box, which is uncharacteristic of them. Even when they did put deliveries in, they were fairly lacklustre. I think, Arsenal did everything perfectly to make it difficult for Manchester City. Let's talk about that red card. So firstly, a few things in the live chat. Nigel saying, I don't think found out is the right way to describe it. But frankly, I expect Arsenal fans to get giddy off this result, so I'll allow it. Exactly. I don't think City have been found out. I think we knew this about City, and it's one thing to observe where their weaknesses are, and it's another thing entirely to expose them.
Yeah.
Because it's not like now suddenly every team in the league is just going to go, we'll just do this against City and then we're going to win. It's not that simple. So I don't think we're going to see any great collapse. City are in such a strong position, but I think it will be important that there is an evolution on this system, because I don't think City, if they change nothing, and I'm not saying they will, but if they don't change anything in the summer, if there's no evolution, I do think that next season will be very difficult to see them in the same position. So, that will be the only concern. But I don't think they should take too much problem from this game. Let's talk about the red card decision, because such a huge impact. It seems that you can't have a nuanced discussion about this. It's either it's a red card, in which case City deserve to win, or somehow it doesn't matter because Arsenal played well. But it probably sits somewhere in the middle. Should Mariona Caldente have been sent off?
Yeah, I don't. I think that I find it hard as people to challenge that. I think that anyone who has watched football for a while or understands the game knows that that's a red card. I mean that the ball's not in the equation. Caldente comes from the side, kind of behind. It's her left leg, catches the back of Hemp, it then comes through and catches her again for good measure. I can't understand why that's not been given as a foul and not seeing Caldente sent off. I think the referee was in a brilliant position to see it. She's right behind the play. She's up with the ball, perfect position. She's got an incredible view of it. There's no one in front of her. I don't know what she's seen to not give that. The only thought I could have is that she thinks it's a foul but didn't want to send her off, and I think that obviously that is the wrong way to go about it, but I think that she's tried to avoid dictating what is a big game, and she didn't want to send Calente off, but if you give that foul, you have to send her off. I think that's the other consideration that people need to realise as well, is that if that is given a free kick, Calente has to go. You can't, give it a foul and then book her. That wouldn't be suitable. But yeah, Hemp's through on goal. Mariona Calente doesn't get the ball. She catches her twice. It's a foul and a red card. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, I think it's an obvious red card. I think we are too kind to officials at times, and part of me understands that, because I think it's a very difficult job, of course, and I don't think these WSL referees are trained to the standard they should be.
No.
They're not given the training to be able to officiate games of such magnitude, of such importance, in front of such large crowds. And clearly, this is a referee in that moment, an official in that moment, who has panicked and made a horribly wrong decision. And so, yeah, part of me is like, well, that can't happen. There needs to be consequences. But there is also that responsibility of people who've made this situation happen. We've got a referee who's unqualified, really. And again, not unqualified that she doesn't deserve to be there, but the qualifications should be higher to be a WSL referee, and the female referees who are part of the programme should be trained to a higher standard. It is far from the first controversy we've had with officiating. And I mean, there'll always going to be problems with refereeing, even with VAR, even with referees to FIFA standard. There'll always be calls of corruption, or that this guy doesn't know what he's doing, or that the rules are wrong, and there'll always be that discussion. But I just think there are so many clear and obvious problems at the moment, and clear and obvious errors from officials in the WSL. We saw it in the Arsenal game at the Arsenal-Chelsea game in the Emirates Stadium earlier this season, where there was the bizarre handball given against Sina Blackstenius. Alessia Russo scored a goal from an offside position, and that was allowed to stand. So that kind of cancels each other out, but there's still two errors from officials. And then Victoria Pelova went in high, and it wasn't given as a red card. And that's three big moments in a game not spotted. And it happens in lots of WSL games. It only gets flagged in these big matches because they're broadcast live on Sky, because they are broadcast to a lot more people. There's a lot more discourse around it on social media. But it is a problem that's affecting the entire league. And I think, we can talk about whether VAR solves it. I don't think VAR solves the whole issue, though. I think the referees need to be trained, though, to a higher standard.
Yeah, I think that is always a debate. There are only only two current FIFA elite standard referees in the WSL. No English officials, bar one. In Emily Carney, who is works in the men's game anyway, doesn't do the WSL. That no English officials go to the World Cups, go to the Euros. Look at the most recent Euros. There wasn't a single, there wasn't a single English referee there, because UEFA don't deem them good enough to do those international tournaments. And I think that says exactly everything you need to know. It is a problem. I think that, as you say, it's difficult with the whole VAR discussion. I think the one thing VAR does do is obviously it alleviates the clear and obvious, and that's the problem right now. I don't have a problem with the small, there's a small, push in the penalty area that gets missed, or there's a crowd of bodies and there's a handball that doesn't get spotted, but it's the glaringly obvious things that, and again, people will say that it's easy to give after looking at replays, but it's the clear and obvious errors that we're talking about that we look at once and we say that's we can give it. I mean the Calente tackle on Sunday, for example. We sat here yesterday, and as soon as it happened, I said that was a foul, because it was a foul, and they're the ones that need to be alleviated. And I think that you can find an in-between, because I don't want it to become nitpicky and stop-start like the men's game has, but I do think that the clear and obvious errors, they need to find a way to cut them out of the game.
I think that's the clear thing, isn't it? We don't want the version of VAR that we see in the Men's Premier League. I think the problem is that it likely would be implemented in the exact same way. I think the implementation is where the problem is. The idea of technology assisting officiating isn't fundamentally wrong. There are so many areas where technology already does that, especially in the men's game, which are easy to implement. Things like goal line technology, where it's just cut and dry and it does the job. The problem with VAR is an inherent problem with the laws in football, is that it's also subjective, but it does feel that there are a high number of fairly objective calls in the WSL right now not being given. And I think this was the latest example. There is zero justification for it not being a foul and a straight red card.
Yeah.
And I think it's sort of smart play from Mariona Caldente. She knows if she doesn't make that challenge that Lauren Hemp's going to score. And I think Caldente understands the situation. She knows that if she makes that challenge in there, there's a chance she's going to get away with it. And, the alternative is they concede. And I think from that moment, again, you can say it both ways. Maybe nothing changes. Maybe City go on to win. But whatever happens, the game state does shift. And it definitely changes what that last half an hour from that point looks like. So, yeah, I think there needs to be a conversation about officials. I don't think we're the people to have it. It needs to be a conversation at the highest level. It needs to be a conversation that the WSL are taking seriously. I think the problem is at the moment they are too focused on things that are of little importance and less about the on-pitch product.
Yeah.
And I think officiating is a large part of that. But this was the latest in what is a frustrating theme of officiating decisions being a big talking point around these big games. I'd rather be talking about how brilliant Arsenal's setup was in this game, as we already have done in this show, or why City struggled to play out. But again, the dominating headline is Mariona Caldente should have been sent off. That impacts the game, and people argue City would have scored from that situation, or once Arsenal were down to 10 players, probably would have found a way back into the game. It's difficult to argue. Ultimately, I don't think it'll have too much impact on City. It will have a huge impact on Arsenal, because Arsenal now in a great spot to qualify for the UWCL, Harry.
Yeah, absolutely massive. It was a big victory. We said going into the weekend that United already won on Saturday, and Chelsea playing Tottenham. It was an opportunity for Arsenal to not only catch back up to United, but to gain on one of, if not both, Chelsea and Tottenham. So it was a massive game for them. The fact they come out of it as well, with the 3 points is huge, especially when you look at the other results that the other, you look at the results that the other top 5 sides have got against City. Arsenal the only one, have come away with a victory, which is massively important. And I think that will, at the end of the season, when we get to the end of the season, if they're in the Champions League by a couple of points, this could be the game that's done it for them. It was a massive victory, and they're in a really good position. And of course they're not in the top 3 right now, but they've got that extra game, and they're playing pretty decently.
Yeah, I think the as good as Arsenal were in these fixtures against City and Chelsea, I do think there needs to be a bit of realism applied to it as well. They set up brilliantly in these individual games. I think what Arsenal have shown though throughout this season is an inconsistency against weaker teams, and I do think that their base system and the problems they've had this season aren't alleviated by this match. They won't play like this in every other game, because you can't play like this in every other game. Teams are going to set up deeper. Teams are going to make life harder for you than Man City did. Man City play a way that they think is going to benefit them, whereas a lot of other teams in the league will set up differently against Arsenal to make life difficult for them. So I still don't think this fixes the issue, and I do think that there is every chance that they drop points then to some of the teams lower in the table who are able to set up deeper and frustrate Arsenal in a way that City don't, because City are obviously then a much more forward-facing team. One thing it does show, though, is something that we've seen becoming a bit of a pattern now for René Slagers, and that is her ability to nail the tactical setup in these big matches. We saw it a few weeks ago against Chelsea, where they were able to be very aggressive in man-to-man press, and they made it impossible for Chelsea to play out. Chelsea got the system wrong on that day, of course, as well, and that adds into it. But Arsenal was super aggressive off the ball, and we saw them capitalise on Chelsea struggling to play out from the back. We saw them move the ball quickly in the final third, and they capitalised on those moments. This is a very similar setup, and they did very similar things in the game against Lionesses, which on reached the Champions League final, and of course in the final itself against Barcelona. So we're seeing this theme emerge, and it's an interesting thing, because obviously from the first half of the season, there was a very different rhetoric about Arsenal in big matches, because they hadn't beaten anyone in the top half of the table. Obviously now we come into the new year and they've already beaten 3 of those sides, drew with Manchester United as well, of course. So that is a huge rhetoric shift, of course, and perspective is important. But the way that Slagers sets up in these matches is very impressive, it has to be said.
Yeah, you have to give her massive credit, because she's making a huge difference in these kind of games. And at the end of the day, these are the games that can just decide the destinations of trophies. They've already learned that in the Champions League, and domestically, of course, it's a bit more difficult because you've still got a lot of games to be played against a lot of other oppositions. But when we're looking at knockout competitions, when we're looking at the Champions League, which they've already won, it's a massive skill for Slegers to have. But yeah, it's made the difference across the last few weeks, and Arsenal, it's the main reason really why they've won the two big games.
Yeah, indeed. Patina saying only saw 30 minutes of the match, the last 30 minutes of the first half, and Arsenal looked great. Well done to them. Still feel City have enough in them to see the title through. I think it's the thing. City are in no trouble from me. 8 points clear of Manchester United. If it was 6, if it was 5, maybe I'd be saying that it could come down to the wire a bit. If United can improve, if Arsenal can keep this going, and City do have a few more shaky results, but City have got through their toughest games now, and the fixture list from here for them, especially without the additional Champions League fixtures that all three of the title rivals are going to have, I think City are in a very comfortable position. Leicester this weekend shouldn't be a problem for them. They've only then got another 6 WSL games left this season. Villa, Tottenham, United, Brighton, Liverpool and West Ham. Now, yeah, if it's based off this season, this weekend, that's a horrible run-in. But they should be absolutely fine in that run. If they beat United away from home after they beat them quite comfortably in the first half of the season, if they win that game, that's pretty much seals it. There's a good chance that they could seal the title that day at Old Trafford, if it is to be played there, or it is at Old Trafford. That would be pretty good for Manchester City fans. We'll see if that can happen. But yeah, I think City are absolutely fine, barring some sort of insane implosion now where all their players get injured and they can't win a game. I don't think they'll have too much to worry about. Let's get on then to our next game, which is of course West Ham 3 to Brighton. This was an incredible game of football. I remember it ticking through as obviously we were live for the Arsenal-Man City fixture. West Ham, though, a huge and, most importantly, deserved victory.
Yeah, absolutely massive for West Ham. When you're down the bottom, you're struggling against it, and you want your new manager to get off to a good start. These are the kind of victories that absolutely make the difference. It was massive for Garino, massive for West Ham. A win that could really turn their fortunes around this campaign. They've done incredibly well they deserved it because they played good football. To then turn it around from 2 goals down, superb from West Ham. Of course, Brighton, major problems to concede 3 goals in 9 minutes, but plaudits to West Ham, because when you're down at the bottom and you're struggling, it is difficult to get wins across the line. But this was a real show of their character and their mentality at the moment.
Yeah, I think the way the game shifted made it look like it was a West Ham side who started slowly and turned the game around, but actually the game itself, West Ham were the better side throughout. They didn't take their chances early on, they squandered quite a few, but they did a fantastic job turning it around. It was Brighton, though, who capitalised earlier on in the game. Haley went close with an early opportunity. West Ham just a bit of messy defending on that one, and Haley probably should have scored there. The first goal for Brighton, though, came from that long ball, straight into the path of Kiko Seike. A wonderfully executed, sort of direct attacking move, and King Ajemek caught out. It's a fantastic lob from Kiko Seike.
Oh, it's brilliant. The technique from Seike is top class. It's just brilliant. The run's good. West Ham just didn't read the long ball at all, and Shemek got caught a bit in no man's land, but Seike it's a touch of class. It was really perfectly weighted. The technique's good, and the composure as well to get it spot on. Yeah, it's a wonderful lot.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. And that, I thought after West Ham started better, Brighton got that goal. I thought we'd see Brighton actually kick on from there and start to look the better side, but yeah, I think it didn't really materialise for Brighton. They did get the second goal in this game, and it looked like that, despite the run of play being the opposite way, Brighton may get a result. It was a lovely combination between Venegas and Haley. Venegas went on this fantastic run and was able to cut inside and slot it home. And I thought that Brighton would kick on from there. just didn't materialise at all for Brighton, and I thought their performance throughout was really, really disappointing, actually.
Yeah, it was a weird one because they were, as you say, they were 2-0 up, but they didn't feel like they were winning it. You watched them and you just didn't think this. I didn't look at that Brighton side and go, yeah, they're 2-0 up in this game. They look really, really comfortable and they're playing some good stuff. Of course, the goals were good, but either side of those goals going in, there wasn't really much going on from Brighton. It wasn't good enough. It just felt a bit flat. It just felt like, although they were 2-0 up, they were just a bit lethargic. I didn't really get it because it's very rare that you see a side winning by a decent margin, 2-0, but they didn't look like the side that were in control of the game.
Yeah, they had that opportunity as well to go 3-0 up that was missed. That probably would have sealed the victory, but yeah, West Ham squandered a lot of early chances. There was the chance in the first half, Martinez unable to turn home at pretty much point-blank range. Just couldn't get anything on the ball as Saïd cut the ball across the box. We saw an Saïd free kick as well in the first half, tipped over by Enadozie, who was absolutely incredible until she wasn't. Enadozie was fantastic in this game, but as West Ham kept putting the pressure on, we saw her performance slip and we saw West Ham find a route back into this game. It was the Phil Morgan sub, really, that was the catalyst, Harry. It just seemed to give them something else in attack that they were missing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Morgan is a player that has a lot of energy, of course has a lot of ability, but the work rate is incredible there, and I think that she it can be a top player. Of course, we've seen her more used as a wing back and a very defensive wing back in terms under Rayan Skinner, but it's nice to see her be able to get further forwards, be a bit more aggressive and be able to have an impact in the final third, and obviously that massively helped West Ham to turn this game around. But yeah, a good sub, I think a very, very good player. And yeah, it's, as I say, it's nice to see her back where she belongs, back where she can cause opposition defences problems and not sat back defending for her life.
Yeah, absolutely, and it was Morgan who got that first goal for West Ham. It was a bit of a strange one, just a cross that was hung into the box, completely caught Enadozie out there and ended up dropping in from a peculiar position.
Yeah, rookie error from Enadozie, really, a top goalkeeper, has had a good game and has had a good season for Brighton, but this was a weird one, just got wrong-footed completely, misjudged the flight of the ball, and it's a cross. Of course it's a cross from Morgan. She's not trying to hit the back of the net at all there. It's got a bit skew whiff, but it worked out for her and it started to come back. But yeah, a real piece of amateur goalkeeping from Enadozie.
Yeah, I thought you could hear the reaction from the fans as soon as that goal went in. It was belief again. I think that first half the first half was very reflective of the first half of the season for West Ham. It's been frustrating. They haven't been clicking in attacking areas. They haven't been firing. And I think that as much of it was a cheer celebration, it was also a sort of sigh of relief, a very audible and very jubilant sigh, but still a sigh of relief nonetheless. And from that moment, it did feel like the energy in the stadium was connecting with the players and they seemed to click into gear and they started to be a lot more direct with it. Ball goes in behind. Enadozie makes the right decision to come out, but makes a right mess of it. And Martinez in the fantastic position to capitalise.
Yeah, again, as a goalkeeper, if you can't come out that far, you've got to get there. And I don't think it was the wrong thing to try and get there, but she had to get there. You can't come that far out of your goal and not get to the ball and allow the striker to go on and score again. Completely misjudged. Enadozie gets it wrong again, and Martinez, well, it's probably one of the easier goals that she will score in her career. Just had to make sure she hit the target, and it was going to go in. Another complete mishap at the back for Brighton, and that levelled the game. And at that point, I thought a point was quite good for West Ham.
Yeah, I think they'd have. I don't think they would have taken it, but it would have been decent given the position they were in. As you say, an easy opportunity. You don't get many 0.85 xG shots from outside the area, but when there's no one in the goal, 15% of players missing that one. Yeah. There are some players that would, but yeah, Martinez, no issue from that kind of position. And again, it felt like the energy kept building in the stadium, and I think that really spurred West Ham on here. They were able to find a way to goal. Great ball over the top from Katie Selim. It finds Martinez in the wide area. She drives it forwards. It's put into the box. it was after a whole scramble that fell out to Zellum. They get it back into the area, and there's a couple shots in there. I think it's Asai, though, who gets that final header home in that scramble, and West Ham taking a dramatic late winner.
Yeah, exactly. That penalty box scramble, spoke volumes of the mentality at where both sides were at. West Ham fully believed they could find a winner, and Brighton knew they were going to lose that game. If you're playing well and you're defending solidly, anyone in a blue and white shirt would have just put their foot through that and dealt with it. No one deals with it. It's messy, it's scrappy, and they allow West Ham to get that third goal. Another, across the board, box defending from Brighton was catastrophic in this game, but as I say, you just knew that West Ham were going to get that final goal. The mentality shift was incredible, the momentum fully swung in their favour, and you just knew it was going to fall to someone in claret and blue to put it in the back of the net, and a well-deserved win. As I say, they were in the game at 2-0 down. They did fantastically to turn it around, and I think that this is a really strong result for them. But yeah, it was one of those where that last 10 minutes, Brighton were all over the place. West Ham were good, but the Seagulls are really poor.
Yeah, I think that is the point to be made. It is 2 weeks in a row now where really poor defending has cost Brighton. I think in the London City game, you at least had the attacking play for Brighton was there, but this game was, they just didn't look on it, and of course it's difficult without your manager there, and I think Chris Roberts they didn't change anything, and I think Dario Vilicic would have changed something. I think the press conference or the interview afterwards, he seemed quite frustrated by how the game had panned out, but I didn't think Brighton offered anything in this match. They didn't play well from the first minute. They didn't manage the game once they were in a fairly fortuitous 2-goal advantage. That's a position they really should have seen the game out from. But yeah, is there any cause for concern there? They started this season well. They've been underperforming that where they should be really. The expected performance has them in around 6th place in the table. They've been slightly below that all season, but this is, is there any cause for concern?
I think that the performances haven't been there, yes, and that long term is something to worry about. But I think this season, with the sides below them also not looking very good, I think they should be okay. I don't see them dropping any further down the table or too far down the table. Obviously, we'll get onto those other mid-table sides that also fell to defeats this week. But yeah, I'm not too worried about them. As I said, I think there's some long-term issues that will be fixed, and later down the line they will want to break this form up. But once Vidicic is back on the touchline, that should massively help. And yeah, even if the likes of West Ham and Liverpool are going to have some revival, there's too many teams between Brighton and dropping into that bottom 4 kind of area. So I think they'll be okay. It is a bad run, but I don't see them slipping too far down the table.
As for the Hammers, up to 10th in the league now. They jump above Leicester, of course, who we'll get to later in the show. They stay ahead of Liverpool, who claim to win, as we'll also get to later in the show. 3 points behind Everton, though, as Everton also won. How do you rate their chances of survival now? They've got a 2-point gap to Leicester City, but they are 5 points off anything in midfield.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, but I think if they play like they did yesterday, then they've got a great shot. Garino's a good manager. Their recruitment in January was superb. They had a brilliant window, and once those players start to click, alongside the fact that Martinez is back amongst the goals, Asai's back amongst the goals, and the front 3 are really starting to fire. You've got Morgan chipping in. Vandela played really well last week, so the attacking players are really starting to come together. Defensively, I think they've just got to be careful they don't let errors catch them out. But across the board, I think West Ham are looking really good.
Yeah, I think they're in a good position. I think Guarino has been a breath of fresh air. I think that there is a freedom to their play. I mean, this game here, they created 3.5 XG. Wow. And that is completely different to what we've seen throughout this season, where they've not really been creating anything. And granted, the Martinez chance was fairly easy, as was the Asai chance, both Asai's from close range, Martinez is from range but with an open goal. But yeah, I think West Ham are in a really decent position. I think that they can Now they can start to take a few more points now. They're probably only, 2 wins away from safety. They play Everton this weekend, then a bit of a difficult run with Manchester United and Arsenal in March. But they finished the season with London City Lionesses, Liverpool and Aston Villa, then Man City on the final day. They've still got to pick up a few more wins, and their schedule is somewhat difficult, but again, I don't think they're too far away now from being in a safe position.
Yeah, exactly that. As the way they'll look at it now is that don't let Leicester outscore them by 2 points, and they'll be absolutely fine. Leicester really don't look like winning at the moment, so West Ham will know that if they just keep the points ticking over, they should be absolutely fine. They've got 2 sides now. Well, between them and hitting bottom spot, which is a great position to be in. So yeah, I think they'll back themselves to end the season pretty strongly.
Yeah, absolutely. Shall we get to our next game then, which is a game at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, Tottenham 0 to Chelsea. This, from the first whistle until about the 30th minute, felt like we were watching Chelsea slipping and continuing the slump that's been there for the last few weeks. They looked a bit lost. It was another tactical tweak. Juan Pastor simplified it, but by doing so, Chelsea did have to adjust to another new system, and yet we saw another sluggish start for Chelsea.
Yeah, absolutely. Chelsea really didn't get going in this one. Tottenham had a bit of energy about them, and the Blues really didn't react. I think I said at the time that we were sitting here and we could see the issues watching it on the TV, but it felt like Chelsea and Bon Pastor were just sleepwalking into another loss with how that game started, and they'd wake up again and suddenly they'd be 2 or 3-0 down because Tottenham were really putting the pressure on. Again, there wasn't anything amazingly good for Tottenham, but they were causing Chelsea issues, and there was no reaction in that first half an hour. They didn't seem to be alert. Players like Olivia Holt, which was allowed to dance through the team and have as much joy as she wanted to, and yeah, Chelsea. They had to ride their luck a little bit in that first 30 minutes because they really weren't in the contest.
Yeah, it's one of those. Chelsea, I think, it's been a bit of an issue in the last few weeks of build-up. There was way too big a gap between players. And Tottenham, with a very high press, were able to put Chelsea into some quite difficult situations. They did turn the ball over a few times, Tottenham. I think the big issue for them was an inability to convert that sort of... because they were getting territory from winning at heart of the pitch. They were also, when Chelsea came forwards and were camped high, Tottenham were able to capitalise and counter quite effectively. But they didn't return that into anything. 12 shots in the first half, just 2 of which on target. Only 1 big chance created. That's just not really good enough. And Olivia Holt struck the crossbar, but outside of that, they didn't threaten Chelsea as much as they really should have. And I think there will be part of Tottenham there where there is that frustration, because it did feel that for once Tottenham were fairly close to Chelsea in this game. And of course Tottenham are in a proper peak right now, and Chelsea are in quite a distinguished dip, or quite a distinct dip, but I think it's a bit of a missed opportunity for Tottenham to perhaps lay one on their rivals who have had that record over them for so long now. But yeah, Chelsea looked lost initially. They did turn it around though. Walsh strike obviously from the corner. She started to become a bit of a threat for Chelsea in front of goal this season.
Yeah, another really well hit effort from Walsh. I think that it's the power that she drives through the ball. It's the way she strikes the ball that makes her so dangerous and have a good chance, because even for a lot of her shooting positions, they're around the edge of the area, around the penalty spot, which is where this goal came from. But even with they take deflections, they take nicks, but because of the power that she just drives through the ball, you can't stop it. There was a touch of a Tottenham defender and Kopp got her leg to it, but it still wasn't enough to stop it going in the goal. And that's a real weapon, to have a player that can drive the ball so nicely from that kind of range is exactly what Chelsea need from their midfielders. And yeah, another goal for Walsh this season. It was a lovely strike, and I think it just shows how vital set pieces can be at this level, because when you are up against it, nicking a goal from a set piece can really push you right back to where you need to be, and that's what happened for Chelsea in this game. But yeah, a really well taken effort from Walsh, and a big goal at the time for Chelsea.
And it was amusing because it came just after Chelsea made this slight tweak. And I've seen a lot of people sort of attribute that goal to Chelsea then playing a lot better. But actually, it was a slight tweak just before the goal that stabilised Chelsea, and actually they took someone out of the attacking third, and that gave them a little bit more space to work with. So what they started doing was dropping Villa Berman. Now, we thought this was going to be how Chelsea lined up from the start. Obviously, they played a four-back with Carpenter, Germer, Bright and Berman. And early on in the game, they're pushing both of those fullbacks high. And we expected Carpenter to be high, a very attacking fullback, but we expected Berman to sort of tuck in a little bit, be a little bit more reserved to make up for the fact that they were going to be obviously very aggressive on the right-hand side with Carpenter. But Berman was pushing forwards, and this did leave Chelsea very exposed. And actually, I thought Walsh and Germer did very well, and Bright as well, to be fair. Bright's often been caught out in those situations. I thought there were a few times where she stepped up and got caught, but actually defending transitions, and possibly helped by the fact it was Beth England up front and not someone who's, incredibly quick. So there wasn't too much of a differential there in the pace. Did allow Bright to make up for it. But yeah, I didn't think. I thought Chelsea were quite open in those moments. What they shifted was pulling Berman into a bit more of a situational back three. Now, it's quite asymmetric, so it's still quite wide, but what that allowed Chelsea to do was a couple of different things, because in build-up they suddenly went from this shape where Hampton had the ball and they had two centre-backs and defence midfielder and everyone else went forwards. It shifted into a bit of a natural back four where Gurn was coming very wide. Bright was in the sort of position of a left centre-back, Berman then as a left-back. So Gurn was almost acting as a right-back. And we saw Hampton actually pushing up in possession to play almost as a right centre-half. And what this gave Chelsea was stability in their own third, but it also gave them then options higher up the pitch, and they were able to play through the lines really effectively. A couple of other shifts as well. We saw Thompson a lot wider because Berman was dropping deeper. Thompson now was hugging the width. We saw James given a bit more of a free roam role. It was a bit of a diamond anyway in that midfield, where James was the figure point of their attack but played more of a false nine role. What we saw them shift was Nusken almost played into that striker position, and it was almost a front two where one would drop off and one would stay in the striker position, and often it was James dropping deep, just dropping into pockets to receive, dropping deep to receive, and then looking to turn and make things happen. And we saw Nusken then pushing into a bit more of a striker position. So it was an unconventional system, but I think it made use of the players that were available that day for Chelsea. There was a few issues in terms of, I think, on the right-hand side, Carnegie and Carpenter just clash way too much. They both want to go into the same space, and Carnegie had two big opportunities in this game to score and didn't take either of them. But that little tweak changed the game really, and Chelsea upped that performance, and Tottenham went on to rue those few chances they missed earlier in the game.
Yeah, it was one of those where they'll be frustrated, because it's one of those where we always say it's a bit different because Chelsea obviously have struggled the last couple of weeks, but we always say when you're playing against top sides, you have to be clinical, you have to take the chances, because and you have to. It's the same in every sport. When the bigger player or when the bigger team are not firing on cylinders, you have to take advantage, because at some point they will click into gear, and Tottenham didn't do that. And I thought that it wasn't even one of those where they had that period and then then they didn't have anything. Of course, they had chances in that first half an hour, but there were opportunities in the second half. There were chances that they should have taken in that second 45 minutes, and they didn't, and it just allowed Chelsea to stay ahead, and that was a massive difference. But yeah, I think Martin Ho will be frustrated that they didn't take those opportunities both across both halves, because they had the chances to make this game a lot more difficult for Chelsea.
Yeah, that second half, as you say, it was the XG statistics make it look fairly even second half. It wasn't really, but Tottenham did have two moments where Chelsea were open, and they should have exposed them really. Tamberg had a header at point blank range which she put over the bar, and that was a big miss. Holt was one-on-one with Hampton, ends up firing straight at the goalkeeper. Those two moments alone could have completely changed the complexion of this game. So yeah, I think Tottenham will really rue this missed opportunity, not just in terms of where this season lies and how important a point or 3 points would have been, but also for the mentality of beating Chelsea, which is something that has always been this dark that they've not been able to break. So yeah, I think they will be frustrated by that one. Thompson, though, able to score again for Chelsea. Alyssa Thompson has had a fairly fruitful start to life in West London.
Yeah, it's been a good run for Thompson. I think that she's really starting to click into gear, and she's one of those players where we knew that once she got going could be a big danger, and it feels like Thompson's kind of been the player that, while everything else has been crashing and burning around her, she's still been delivering and playing pretty decently. Obviously got the goal against Man City, even though Chelsea was smashed last Sunday, and yeah, a big goal yesterday to really just seal the win for Chelsea. Reacted well off the rebound. It was a brilliant strike, did exactly what you need to do in that situation. Drive power behind it, keep it down, but make sure you hit it hard, because players are going to panic, they're going to throw their bodies across it, the goalkeeper's going to scurry across and jump and dive for the ball. So she did well, kept it down, but drove enough power through it, beat Cobb on pure pace and power. Really nice strike from Thompson. Another goal in a Chelsea shirt, and yeah, she's really starting to click into gear, but also in scoring important goals for Chelsea as well, which I think is she's a brilliant player, so of course that's what you expect. But yeah, another really good goal to add to her catalogue.
Yeah, third top goal scorer in the league now. Only Kirsty Hansen and Khadija Shaw have scored more than Alyssa Thompson this season. As you say, big goals in big games. Yes, the City one was a consolation, but it was still a goal against Manchester City. Take nothing away from Thompson. And a goal as well against Arsenal in a game that Chelsea probably should have won. A goal in this game as well against a rival in Tottenham. So yeah, we're seeing Thompson really click in the gear, and a Chelsea side who haven't had an out-and-out goal scorer for a while now. Obviously Sam Kerr used to be that presence, but she's missed the best part of the last 2 seasons. Still not fully fit. This season we're seeing her introduced slowly throughout this campaign, but they don't want to rush her back in. Last season Chelsea, they shared the goals out, but there was a concern there wasn't a main figurehead. But Thompson's starting to establish herself in that mould, perhaps. 6 goals, not a bad return for her, still less than half of what Khadija Shaw has mustered up. Absolutely ridiculous, the rate at which Khadija Shaw is scoring at the moment. But yeah, it was a nice move from Chelsea as well, I think, that Thompson goal. That ball, it was moved very quickly. We've seen Chelsea struggle to move the ball forwards in recent weeks, but they got the ball through the lines quite effectively. Cuthbert hitting it in behind, Nuska makes the run. And again, I think Chelsea have missed a player making a run in behind, and that is an area where, against the Tottenham side who like to play a high line, on a pitch like the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, which is a massive surface, it gave Chelsea that space to exploit, and they did really well with that. And obviously Thompson getting the final touch in there. So yeah, Metalhead says, is it just me, or did it seem like Carpenter and JRK kept running into the same places on the pitch instead of playing off each other? Yeah, exactly what I said a few moments ago. The problem with Chelsea right now, and this is something we spoke about the last few weeks, is that I don't think 1+1 knows their best system. The squad at the start of the season was recruited with one very specific system in mind. Now Chelsea want to shift that, and there's a lot of areas which it doesn't quite fit. You'd want a right winger there who's happy to play in the half space to allow Carpenter to overlap. But who can really do that? I mean, you can put James there, but then who do you play in the 10? Because Weaker's out with a knock at the moment. Hamano's gone out on loan to Tottenham. Wrighton hasn't really flourished this season, and so it makes a little more sense to play Carnegie, who has been okay this season. But I mean, she still missed 2 big opportunities that really should have scored in this game. But yeah, I don't think they're complementary. I think Carpenter and Carnegie do very similar roles. Last season, what Chelsea had was Bronze, who was a little bit more reserved in her movement. She was also happy. She was happy to either sit a little bit deeper or come inside with the ball, and so that allowed Carnegie just to be that sort of out-and-out right winger. And on the left side, you had the left back overlapping in Baltimore, and it clicked quite nicely then. But Chelsea are now trying to shift the side in which that is happening, as well as shift their midfield as well, and what's happening in the front line. So it is. I mean, people are saying it's just what they did last season. There are a lot of tweaks in there, but broadly in terms of structure, yeah, it's not too far away. But yeah, I thought those two don't work. So I think you're spot on there, Metalhead. But yeah, injury concerns as well for Chelsea have been a huge thing throughout this season, but even more after this game. Walsh appeared to be fine despite being substituted at half-time. I thought Lexi Potter came on and did a fine job, didn't notice her in there, which is exactly what you want from a defensive midfielder. You don't want to notice them, because if you are, they're probably doing something wrong. I think the best defensive midfielders go about their business fairly unflashily, I think is a weird way to describe it, but it works. But the one more concerning was Millie Bright, not walking comfortably after the game, hobbled off of the field. This would be a huge problem for Chelsea. They've only got, if Bright is out injured, they've only got 2 fit senior centre-halves, and that's Berman and Germer, both of whom have been playing, obviously, in these recent matches. Berman as a left-back. They don't have another left-back if they're going to play this kind of system, because Niamh Charles is out injured at the moment, so Baltimore wouldn't really be able to play that more defensive role. And Chelsea are in a real injury crisis. I mean, it's often understated, I think, because Chelsea often deal fine with injury crisis because their squad is so strong, but it's so severe at this point that they only had 3 outfield senior players on the bench. With Bright now potentially out as well, Chelsea are looking incredibly light, especially with some big fishes coming up.
Yeah, it's a horrible time to get it. You know, we are getting into the business end of the season. We're getting into the part of the campaign where the trophies are up for grabs. They've got, Chelsea already got the League Cup final, FA Cup, round 16 game coming up, Champions League as well in the next couple of months. So yeah, it's a crash time of the season. It's a really bad time for Chelsea to have all these injuries. Again, it's going to massively depend on what the return times are for all the players that are currently out, because Chelsea need as many players back as possible. The problem though that comes with this kind of situation is that players will get rushed back even when they're not fully fit, and all that does is lead to more injuries. So yeah, it's a really difficult situation for Chelsea to be in, and for Bon Pastor it's going to be very difficult to try and juggle all the competitions.
Especially with the Asian Cup in March, that's going to leave Chelsea without Sam Kerr or Ellie Carpenter. So yeah, I mean, Chelsea will be hoping that there's some of those players are going back from injury very soon. I mean, Metalhead asking, being quiet in the transfer window seems odd with those injuries, and if you knew Makaro was leaving. Yeah, I think it is interesting. What it does perhaps suggest is that, one, there is a trust in youth players. Lexi Potter, Chloe Tsai both came on and did okay in this game. But also that there is likely not long until some of these players are returning. I mean, Ramirez now has been out since August with an ankle injury. That's not a usual recovery time for an ankle injury. So shouldn't be too far away now from seeing Maya Ramirez back in the Chelsea side. But yeah, that's been radio silent really. Obviously, Kadisha Buchanan a little bit longer on her ACL, but yeah, there's a lot of little niggles and stuff with I think Bronstow has undergone surgery. Wika Kaptein was only a knock though, so should be back shortly. So you think Chelsea will have a few back soon, but again, there's such silence on so many of them. So yeah, I really don't know what is going to happen there, but we'll see what happens for Chelsea. Let's get on to our next game then. Liverpool 4-1 Aston Villa. What on earth happened here, Harry?
Well, I have to say, I think Liverpool are really starting to get there. They've got better and better as the season's gone on. The January window was absolutely brilliant, but this, for me, feels like everything they've been building for, everything they've been working towards this season, finally all came together in this game against an Aston Villa side that admittedly were poor in this contest, but massive credit to Liverpool. They got it right today. It is finally starting to click for Gareth Taylor at the Reds. They are getting some results behind them. This was brilliant across the board, absolutely brilliant. Even the conceding, that was a brilliant goal. Take nothing away from Taylor, but Liverpool absolutely brilliant this game. They took advantage of Villa being all over the place, and yeah, a massive victory in the context of that relegation fight.
Yeah, I'd like to open with what Gareth Taylor said after the game, which was that there was a question from the reporter about, has it been a matter of instilling more confidence? And he said, well, no, I think the players have confidence. What I've been instilling them within them is more courage. And I think that we saw Liverpool play with courage in this game. We saw players try things in the final third. We saw players make movements in the penalty area to try and create opportunities, and we saw that really pay off for Liverpool. They were ruthless, they were clinical, and they punished Villa fully. I mean, it's easy when you're playing a side who aren't 100% on it to I think go into the game or go through the game very easily, or just going through the motions, get the game over with. But there was a ruthlessness from Liverpool. That was really important. Opening goal was really well taken by Enderby. Lovely move down the left hand side from Liverpool. Holland cuts it across the box. Enderby able to arrive onto it at the right moment by making a bit of a deeper run. She I think it's easy again for a player to sort of hide there at the back post, but she darts inside behind Martha Thomas in the perfect position to receive the ball and tucks it home. And Amir Enderby, who hadn't scored in 2 WSL seasons before this, now has 4 goals in this campaign. Completely different player under Gareth Taylor.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. It's incredible what not only belief and confidence can do for a player, but what also, being coached by a pretty decent forward in his day in Gareth Taylor. He has got loads of experience about how to put the ball in the back of the net, and I think that is rubbing off on his players. We're seeing all kinds of strikers, as we'll get onto a moment with Martha Thomas, but another out of form player who hit the back of the net once again. And these players are really starting to click into gear, and it's great to see Enderby, because I think because how many first team minutes she's got, I think people still forget how young she is. I still think she's a top talent, and it's nice to see her having a bit of confidence about her play and starting to hit the back of the net at a consistent rate.
Yeah, goal 2, the build-up was almost identical, but the result the same, but a bit more of an unconventional finish. Ball in from the left-hand side again from Holland. This time it's blocked by the defender, but it goes up in the air, and a strike from Thomas I don't think I've ever seen any other footballer produce. A very unique goal from Martha Thomas.
Yeah, it was something quite special. Fair play to Martha Thomas with that bit of creativity to come in the spur of the moment to find a way to poke that home, but it hit the back of the net, and that's her job to do as a striker. It's another goal for Thomas, who is also enjoying a really good run. And I thought 2 well worked goals. Criminal from Villa to let the opposition score 2 pretty identical goals, but for Liverpool, if it worked once, why not try it again? And bang, they led 2-0.
Yeah, I was a bit disappointed Footmob describing it as a right-footed shot from very close range to the centre of the goal. I would go for athletic, gymnastic-looking strike poked home gracefully by Martha Thomas. But very unique goal. Not something you see every day. I thought after that, Liverpool did take their foot off the gas a little bit, and the first half seemed to just fly by. They did get more at the end of the half. Aston Villa hit back though before that, and it was Hansen really who was the architect, probably the only positive spark, who created the opportunity here, but still performing Kirsty Hansen despite Villa being very poor.
Yeah, Kirsty Hansen, she's inevitable. It's one of those where Villa are imploding around her, and she's still darting between defenders and getting shots away and setting up players to score goals. Hansen looked really bright, and I think was unlucky to not come away with more from this game. The assist was a very nice piece of play. Of course, it's a great strike, but brilliant from Hansen in the wide area. And then she had a couple of opportunities, for some saves out of Falk. It was one of those from Kirsty Hansen where she deserved to be on the winning team.
Outside of the goal though, Villa very poor. 10 shots in total in this game, but only 0.57 xG. Created very little here for their attackers. 3 shots on target, 0 big chances created. I think it's interesting because this isn't the same rhetoric we've seen for the Villa this season. Often the narrative has been Villa have been great defensively and they're getting the ball forwards well, but there's players in the box who aren't doing their job. This wasn't that. I thought Villa were incredibly poor defensively. Without Lynn Vilms, they lacked anyone to progress the ball, but they also seemed to just lack organisation in that back line. I think their midfield was very rotated, and that was a bit of a problem. I thought that it was just they seemed to try too many different things at the same time. I mean, wing backs. Starting the game with all of Hansen, Mullet, Hijikata, and Salmon on the pitch was a little bit bizarre. Maltby on there as well. So it was just too much rotation from Villa, and they tried to bring on subs to change that. Nice one. Grant came on. Moritz was subbed on at half time as well. They had to bring on Roebuck after injury to D'Angelo, and Staniforth as well came on for Jean-Francois, but it never clicked in this game at all for Aston Villa.
No, it didn't at all. They look miles off it, and they're struggling a little bit at the moment. But this game was the real wake-up call. I feel like they've floated through the last couple of games where they've been okay, but they've just been on the wrong side of the result, or maybe they have got a point from it. But this game was a real shake-up, and I think that they will definitely be look to bounce back from this one next weekend.
It just feels though that all of Villa's woes are coming from classic 3-back issues. Like Holland had so much space because it's very difficult when you're that right centre half and the right wing back to have that understanding.
Yeah.
Now I think that what we've seen this season is that there's been a really good understanding between Grant and Films of who's going to cover, who's going to push up. Does Grant need to get back on? Can she stay a little bit higher? But when you've got 2 players in there who haven't been doing it all season, there was that disorganisation. And I think that was kind of prevalent across this Villa team. The defending, box defending was really poor in this game. As for the third goal, it was Villa failing to deal with the corner, spills out to the edge, and Grace Fisk, I think, advertising herself as a potential striker in the future because a very well-hit strike from Grace Fisk.
Yeah, it was a good effort. Liverpool did well to keep it alive. Villa really should have dealt with it. They had so many opportunities to get the ball clear. They didn't take them. Villa did well Liverpool did well to just keep the ball moving, keep the ball ticking. It fell to Fisk, and again, similar to what I said about Walsh, is when you drive that much power through it, keep it low, a bit of a grass cutter, it's going to be very difficult to keep out, even if someone can get in front of it, and that's exactly what happened. A good strike from Fisk and a bit of an unlikely goal scorer.
Yeah, and then the fourth goal coming from Orly Silag, her first WSL goal. It was a nice ball over the top. Villa just looked dejected after the Grace Fisk goal, and Silag adding another one in extra time. A really good finish from her, and I think an important one just to make sure you get that first WSL goal, and that's killed now that sort of underlying, especially when it comes down to the sort of mental side of the game, because you're going to be, every time that she's in on goal, and she even overplayed this one, you overthink it, because you're thinking, I need to score, I haven't scored yet, and it just ramps up the pressure. This will just take that pressure off, and I think for Liverpool now, all their attackers are firing. They're playing with a bit more freedom. They're playing with confidence. And as Gareth Taylor said, they're playing with courage. And I think that's really important. So, this was strong. This was really strong from Liverpool. They're starting to look up the table now for the first time since the start of the season. Liverpool are off the bottom of the table. Into 11th now, a point above Leicester City. Granted, Leicester have a game in hand, but that is against Arsenal. 7 points off Brighton. Only 6 points off Aston Villa. Where is the ceiling for this Liverpool side, and are we going too early? We're saying that this could be a good season for them.
I think it could end well. It's a difficult one. I don't think they'll get too much further than they are now. The main goal will still be to steer clear of the drop. They could. I think they'd happily take an 8th, 9th finish just to see them through. But I think that 6 point gap to Villa is more of a concern for Villa than it is for Liverpool. Liverpool won't be too worried about it. If they catch Villa, they catch Villa. But as long as they don't go down, that's the main concern. For Villa, that will be the concern, is that they are only 6 points ahead of the side that have been bottom of the league for about 12, 13 game weeks out of the 15.
For Liverpool, the important run will come in that March-April period. In March-April, they play Leicester, Brighton, Everton, West Ham. That if they win those 4 games, I think they're going to be around mid-table, which would be a fantastic end to what was a very difficult first half of the season. So, they've still got to play all of the big 3, Arsenal, Chelsea, City. They play Chelsea this weekend. They've then got City and Arsenal the last 2 games of the season. So if it does come down to those last 2 games, they could be in trouble. But I don't see them having any issues in that run. Leicester, Brighton, Everton and West Ham. I think they can get 4 wins from 4 there, and that would put them in a fantastic spot. But we'll see where they end up. If they somehow won all 4 of those games, they'd be on 22 points. They're then looking quite comfortably at mid-table. So, you never know what's possible for Liverpool. We'll see how they end up this campaign. But, not too bad. As for Aston Villa, I have some concerns now for Aston Villa. They're only 7 points above the drop. They're only 2 points above Everton, who have been really bad this season. So, I think they are no longer being dragged into it. They are being dragged into it. I just think it's a much closer league now. The gap between the worst side and then the best side is narrowing. And I think that's just more obvious in midfield, where things do congest up a little bit more. London City are only 10 points off Leicester now. That's not a big gap between 5th and bottom of the league. So, we'll see what happens there. Or 6th in the bottom of the league, sorry. So, we'll see what happens there. Let's get on to our next game, the penultimate game of this game. It was the first game of this game. Leicester City 0, Manchester United 2. This was not a particularly fun watch, Harry.
No, it won't go down in history, will it? It was a United side at half pace, but was still good enough to beat a Leicester side that really looked. They're in trouble. They look really, really poor. It's just one of those where there didn't seem to be too much quality on display. You know, there were a couple of goals for United, but even those weren't brilliant. We weren't sat here marvelling over them. A couple of players played well. Apart from that, I think everyone for United kind of got through playing at half speed, which is exactly what they want with the Champions League coming up on Thursday. That suits them perfectly to have a bit of a slower, less taxing game. So that played nicely into their hands. Leicester weren't good enough, and yeah, as you say, it was just it really, it weren't one for the ages, this one.
Yeah, a semi-rotated United team. Narssoon and Lundqvist. That is a lot of rotation by Skinner standards. So yeah, I think it's not too worrying. This it wasn't a fun game.
No.
I've seen quicker games of walking football. They neither side were massively up for it. It felt there were times where Leicester tried to break away, but there's just no threat in that Leicester attack. I mean, it looked that they could have got something from the game, but every time they got into the final third, just nothing happened. Failed too much the ball. I thought there were sparks from Alicia Lehmann, but they fizzled out too quickly, and I think they failed to capitalise on what was an opportunity. United were not perfect by any stretch in this game. They were quite poor, and I don't think Leicester were anywhere near the level to be able to beat them, and that is unfortunate. But yeah, United showing the same issues, struggling to break down low blocks. It's been an issue for them for so long now. I do think a lot of it would have been solved with Toon on the pitch, because I think with Toon, what you would end up with, and probably Turland starting actually, but with Toon and Turland, what you would end up with is not only do those two combine really nicely, but you have Toon and Park on the edge, you can create opportunities, and that's going to draw Leicester out, because that's going to create issues, and that's going to create space then for some of their other players. If you've got Turland in there, you've got someone who can actually offer an aerial threat, and obviously the first goal for United was from fantastic move from Leah Schuler. I thought she may have got her first WSL goal, but she didn't make any contact with it. Great burst towards the front post. Zigiotti delivers it in. It doesn't quite touch Leah Schuler. She tried to claim it, don't blame her, but bounces past the goalkeeper Olivia Clark, who really should have done better. But I did think once Turland actually came on, they looked so much stronger. And that does worry me for Schuler about her ability to adapt to this league. It was one of the sort of problems I highlighted when I looked at Schuler and Wangerheim coming to Manchester United. I did a video on that about a month ago now. And it's one of the problems of, can she adapt to this league? She's played in the Bundesliga. She's a player who isn't the strongest, doesn't thrive on contact. And I did have concerns about her ability to adjust to the WSL, which is an incredibly physical league, incredibly demanding league. And we've seen a lot of players come across, no matter how world class, and struggled to adapt. I hope that isn't the case for Leah Schuler, but she hasn't been on it, I don't think, in the first few games. Turland came on and I think, gave them something very different tack, added a goal to her tally for the campaign as they capitalised well. They pressed high against Leicester. It was poor playing out from the back, and Turland ended up tucking it home.
Better for United. It was well worked. They did well to turn the ball over. It's not a foul on Tierney at all. For I think Leicester weren't too happy about it, but it weren't a foul. It was just good strength from Zigiotti and good finish from Turland, who did well, because I thought she initially overplayed it, but she managed to wriggle a shot away, and that sealed it for United. There was a little bit of a threat that Leicester could nick something, but it would have been out of the blue if the Foxes had done that. But good for United just to kill the game off and to confirm the win. Then that last 10-15 minutes was a lot simpler because of that second goal.
Yeah, it's just a shame. It wasn't a fun watch. I think Leicester are really struggling at this level. They are playing to get results, and that's absolutely understandable. I think they will continue to get results, but they are bottom now. And the problem is now, being chasers, it's not really enough to get a point. And I do have doubts over Leicester's ability to get 3 points. Now, I think they can still survive the relegation playoff game. I think they're a good enough team that they should get through that match. But I would be concerned if they meet a strong Birmingham or a Bristol City or a Crystal Palace or a Newcastle on their day. I think all those sides can beat Leicester. So I would have some concern there. But We'll see what happens. I am concerned though. I think Leicester could be in a bit of trouble. I think that Everton, West Ham and Liverpool have all taken a bit of a step forwards in the January transfer window. Less so with Everton, but they did sack Brian Sorensen and that seems to have freed them up to actually play football. Let's get on to Everton then. Speaking of them, London City Lionesses 0-1 Everton. I was not looking forward to watching this game before it even happened. I can say after watching it back, I was right to not be looking forward to watching this game. I thought London City were positive-minded, but they didn't really have any sort of execution in the final third.
They just amaze me every week because this was one of their, as you say, they were quite positive, they were trying different things, they were trying to be on the front foot, and it was one of their better performances, but they walked away with nothing. And then they'll play really poorly next week and probably win 3-0, but this game, I think they were disappointed it didn't come off. They tried to be aggressive, they realised that Everton were on a bad run and were struggling towards the lower end of the table, and they saw that as an opportunity to go out, play some good football and get the win across the line, and it didn't come off. Yeah, the chance creation wasn't there. The chances they did create were, they weren't great opportunities. They did well to trouble Brosnan, but they weren't brilliant. But yeah, it'll be frustrating for London City because I thought this was probably one of their more positive fixtures, yet they've walked away with nothing to an Everton side that have just sacked their manager and are also struggling this season.
Yeah, Phil, welcome to the stream. Nigel says this match was a microcosm of London City this season. Well, no, because if it was a microcosm, they wouldn't have had a shot. But it was just a game where they had one shot in this match of a 0.2 XG, and that was Isabel Goodwin, who again was very lively in this game, but just couldn't take those chances. But there wasn't anything created that was brilliant. There was such a lack of movement in the final third. Yeah, they were positive in terms of trying to get the ball forward, but Everton were great defensively. London City couldn't break them down, and I mean, you'd say they tested Brosnan, and to an extent they did, but it was a wonder shot from Godfrey cutting inside again. I thought it was going to be a sort of a redo of the goal she scored against City just a couple of weeks ago, but. No, it was saved well by Brosnan, tipped wide. Outside of that, there was a Goodwin header that was sort of bounced back to the goalkeeper with very little power on it. They didn't do enough in this game, London City. 17 shots, just 4 on target, 0 big chances created. It feels like they've made absolutely 0 progress. And to an extent, I feel sorry for Eder Maestre. The problem is Maestre's come in after Proyce was probably sacked unfairly. If he'd had the summer, maybe he'd have implemented his tactical ideas. I think this squad is such a mismatch of players who just don't fit together. And we're seeing that clash of styles out there on the field because they're just not clicking anywhere. Nigel says positive actions, but overall no real cutting edge or incision, absolutely. And not their whole season, just the good performance they've had, which isn't many. Absolutely. Everton though, brilliant defensively. I thought they still weren't incredible coming forwards, but this is an interim manager who's had a couple games or a couple days to work with the side coming into this game. And I thought they did incredibly well to take an important 3 points.
Yeah, absolutely. It was interim 101, which I really like to see. It frustrates me when these caretaker managers come in, or they're just covering and filling the gap, and they try and do something crazy and they mix things up. But that's not what they did. I thought the interim manager he got it spot on in this game, put 11 players out there, all in their positions, just told them to play football, made them defensively solid, and then but still looking pretty bright when they came forwards. Everton nailed it in this game. When you're without a manager, you've just got to look to be solid, be consistent, and make it difficult for the opposition. That's exactly what they did. They played some nice stuff, some decent bits in there. I think certain players had some good performances, but across the board, it was just. There seemed to be a bit of a weight lifted off Everton. They weren't just trying to play out all the time and just giving it away all the time, which is what they're doing under Sorensen. They were much more sensible in their decision making. They got the basics right, and that enabled them to beat a side like London City. Of course, it wouldn't be good enough to beat other sides, but caretaker manager set them up. They set up in a way that made them good enough to beat a side like London City, and that's all they need to do this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. They did the basics. They nailed sort of set-piece defending. London City had 15 at corners, and None of them were worth talking about. They did nothing. It's incredible. 15 corners. You'd think eventually you'd start getting it right.
Yeah.
No, they didn't. It was still terrible. And Everton dealt with those well. I think the one area they really struggled was the midfield. They absolutely lost that midfield battle. Van Gaal just got bullied in there. It didn't help that London City just kept committing fouls. 12 fouls committed by London City in this game. Everton with only 4. But they were roughed up in there. But they were a bit more direct than we've seen them this season. In the attacking third, they were much better. They combined quite nicely. Ima Gabara, I thought, did incredibly well. Was lively throughout, took trouble with the goalkeeper with a few shots, and then ended up, of course, scoring that goal. It was London City trying to play out from the back. Mamiki pounced on it and was able to feed it into Gabara. It was a really good finish as well from the striker, and that made the difference. But yeah, Everton did well. Big 3 points. And the manager of Everton beating Maestros London City. Not a good look then for London City Lionesses.
It's not, but I'm not worried about them because, as I say, their results have been so hit and miss. Their results have been so contrasting to their performances. As we say, we've come on here on a Monday and spoken about where they've played really poorly but won the game, and then we've had weeks like this where they've played pretty well but and lost the game. So I'm not too worried about them because inconsistency is kind of their motto at the moment. I think it's not a good look. Of course it is, and you don't want to lose to a side that have just sacked their manager. It just it shows they're in turmoil, but. I don't think they did too much wrong in this game, and I think that it's more of a testament to the fact that Everton got it right, and when Everton do get it right, it shows they've got the quality to pick up some decent points. But yeah, they're Everton in a great position, and I think that this at the end of the day, I think we will probably this needs to be looked at as just a game between two mid-table sides, and Everton on the day Everton nicked it.
Yeah, I mean, or you could look at it as 2 relegation sides.
Or 2 relegation, yeah.
It's so close at the moment, I think, between relegation and mid-table. It's the lines are very much blurred. But big 3 points for Everton. They're only 5 points off London City now, which is the top half of the table.
Yeah.
Who knows what happened in the back half of the season? They've got good players there. It will depend who they bring in. I imagine Phelan will do it now to the end of the season, Scott Phelan. I don't think they'll bring in a manager. With what 7 games left of the campaign, it feels a bit pointless. But yeah, if he can just get them to the end of the season, get some results, and then they'll look in the summer to bring in a manager and build a team that works rather than buy loads of players and see how the manager fits them into his system. But yeah, they've started looking like a football team and not some sort of Frankenstein monster of just loads of things jumbled together. It worked. They beat London City. Big 3 points. They do need to start winning duels in midfield though, because they did get bullied a bit in that midfield. But yeah, much better from Everton. Shall we get then to Aerial Fantasy? That rounds up the game week. It was a very fun game week 15. Let's get though to Aerial Fantasy because for the first time, or for the second time I think this season, I have outscored Harry, and that is a momentous occasion that we should all celebrate. I'll start with my team. 45 points, 5 more than the average, better than average people, and only many points off the highest, 36 points off the highest, but we're making progress. 45 points this week wasn't much to write home about, but it was better than Harry. It has taken me into the top 100 now, other than Football Chat leagues. I think a lot of the people who've been performing, all their players flopped, and all mine were doing very well. Slightly annoyingly, Falcon goal with 2. I benched Hampton with 10. Very frustrated for that because that would have been game changing if I'd started Hannah Hampton. Backline Knack with 2, disappointing. Thought she'd keep a clean sheet, and she's visionary, but she didn't do anything. Very disappointed. Sandberg, big 8 points, very happy, clean sheet and 2 bonuses. Rodar, I brought her in this week because she's visionary, and I thought that Everton were quite poor and they had just like their manager. I thought London City would play well. They didn't. Rodar didn't even start either, so she'll be getting gone next week. Then Park with 3 points, James with 3 points. Would have wanted more from both of those. My start of the game week, captained Madison Haley, 14 points. Very happy with that captaincy decision. That was a big differential because none of the big captaincy choices did anything. Corrales with 2, Gelpset with 2, Shaw with 2, and then 6 from Kiko Seike. Very happy with that. Now I'm up to 96th in the Women's Football Chat League. The comeback is on. 7 game weeks to go, and next week I think I'm going to play the Wall.
Wow.
So here we go. I'm coming. I'm going to win the league.
Wow. quite disappointing for me. 37 points, 3 below the average, and it has seen me drop in all the divisions.
Embarrassing.
I'm now down to 155th in the overall league, which is a bit of a shame, and 32nd in the Women's Champions League. So very disappointed with that one. Yeah, it wasn't a great week. Clean sheets for Tullis, Joyce and Carpenter. I had I had Koga, which was a bit of a... I had Koga and Holt in there, which was always risky against Chelsea. I had a lot of players playing against each other this week.
Poor planning that. If you planned like some other people, you'd be alright.
Rubbish. I had Casper, who conceded to Arsenal. I captained Shaw. Got that one wrong. That was the main thing. The captaincy was kind of what hurt me. Hansen still delivered with an assist on 5. Alyssa Thompson 8. But that was it for point scorers. I gambled on Tveten. I thought she might start or at least get on against West Ham. She played a minute and then came on and got booked. So that failed miserably. 0 points.
Could have got Madison Haley, couldn't you?
I could have got Madison Haley, but I didn't. I had Vandela and Gorey, and considering West Ham scored 3 goals, I would like to have thought that one of them might contribute. No.
Vandela came before they even started scoring.
Yeah, that's good. And she also got booked, so that's brilliant. Gorey as well only played a minute, so even better with that one. Or only played, didn't get to the 60. And then
didn't start the game. Katrina Gorey came on the 90th minute. Came on the 64th minute.
Rubbish.
To be a game changer, but didn't do anything.
Bench wise, I had Martha Thomas on 6, but apart from that, no more points on my bench. Yeah, I'm disappointed with that.
Yeah, it won't be long, so I'm catching you.
Rubbish.
I will be. I'm going to do it. Anyway, that is everything from us this week. I hope you have enjoyed. We'll be back with more throughout this week. Tomorrow, we're not here, but we will have a video going out at 12 o'clock, so look out for that, where we predict the knockout playoff round of Women's Champions League. And then Wednesday and Thursday, back-to-back double streams for the WSL knockout playoff rounds. That'll be this week and next week, so look out for all of those. We'll be back as well with this weekend with more WSL action. Friday night kickoff, Manchester City taking on Leicester, and the double up on Sunday as well. That was everything from us today. Thank you guys very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.